Good evening, friends, and welcome again to our nightly meditation practice. As we always do, we will begin the evening by paying homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Thank you. As we usually do around this time of the week, maybe a few days earlier, but given my move, things got delayed a little bit. I'm going to read to you the next two chapters in the Perfect Enlightenment Sutra. And as you know, I have been taking this course with Buddha Dharma University. And if for no other reason than to expose me a little more to some Mahayana teachings, I have studied greatly in depth with the Venerable Kemananda, the Pali canon, but I really felt like I needed to study the Mahayana canon some, or the Mahayana Sutras some. And as I've discussed before, this is called a Mahayana Sutra, and I'm not sure why. It clearly was developed after the concepts of Mahayanism were well born and established. And it is clearly Chan masters creating a canonized form of their Taoist principles and practices. That's what I've gathered from it. So, as you know, some of the struggles that I've had with this are the basic question of how many forms of enlightenment are there? This is not the form of enlightenment that the Buddha was teaching to end all suffering and to liberate one from the cycle of samsara. So I continue to struggle with it on those bases, not on the basis that it is teaching principles that lead one to an enlightened mind, because I do believe that it is. I guess I struggle with calling it Buddhism. So anyway, enough said. Into the next two chapters, which I said I started sharing rather a month ago or so. But anyway, so this chapter is called The Bodhisattva at Ease and Pervading Powerful Majestic Virtue. Then the Bodhisattva at ease and all-pervading powerful majestic virtue arose and asked the Buddha, "Great compassionate world-honored one, you have greatly explained the different ways to be in accordance with the nature of enlightenment, and because of that, you have caused the minds of a multitude bodhisattvas to become illuminated. Hearing your wisdom voice has given so much benefit and merit, even though we haven't done any spiritual practices to receive it. World-honored one, as an analogy, a great city has 4 outer gates for those coming from the 4 directions to enter into the city. As there is more than one road to the city, likewise, there is more than one skillful means for bodhisattvas to adorn Buddha lands and attain awakening. I pray that the world-honored one will share with us the number of different kinds of spiritual trainees and all the skillful means and training steps that will enable the bodhisattvas in this assembly and all sentient beings in the Dharma ending age who seek the great vehicle of Mahayana to quickly come to awakening and to playfully abide in the Buddha's ocean of great nirvana." The Buddha answered the Bodhisattva at ease in all-pervading, powerful, majestic virtue, saying, "The radiant awareness of unsurpassable, wondrous enlightenment pervades everywhere in all 10 directions and gives rise to Buddhas and all dharmas, as everything is equal and of the same substance, suchness. As far as the various practices are concerned, in reality, they are not different from one another. The expedient methods that accord with the perfect enlightenment are numberless. Even though there are numberless practices, they all fall under 3 broad types which resonate with the inclinations of different practitioners. Samatha. If a bodhisattva awakens to the wisdom of his inherent radiant awareness, they can use that recognition of perfectly clear stillness to quiet the small mind and ease the body. In that stillness, you can see and know when you're being pulled away by your thoughts and can witness the commotion and motion of the small mind of perceptual consciousness. Wisdom arises from this stillness, from this calm, from this quiet, and your attachment and clinging onto the dust-like, dream-like, illusion-like rise and fall of the body and mind, and all appearances stop. As this stillness and quietness arises from within, you experience lightness, ease, and compassion. In this quietness and stillness, the minds of all Buddhas and all the worlds of the 10 directions are revealed like reflections in a mirror. This skillful means is called samatha. Samapatti, vipassana, insight meditation. If a bodhisattva awakens to the wisdom of his inherent of his inherent radiant awareness, they can use that recognition of perfect clarity to realize the illusory nature of all dharmas. You can use the radiant awareness to see and know the illusory, fleeting, grasping, moving nature of the small mind, the sense faculties, and their objects. Then, using the analytical power of the small mind, they use illusion to eliminate illusion and eliminate illusory multitudes. Seeing and knowing illusion, then compassion, lightness, and ease naturally arises. Bodhisattvas who train in this gradual arising insight practice discover that there is an observer of illusions which is not the same as the illusion. Eventually you will see and know that this sense of being an observer is also an illusion, and all appearances of illusions will end. This marvelous and wonderful expedient training method practiced by the bodhisattvas is like a seed sprouting and growing from the earth. It is called samapatti or vipassana. Jhana. If a bodhisattva awakens to the wisdom of their inherent radiant awareness and releases from stillness and illusory appearances, they will know that both the body and mind are also concepts to be dropped. They will naturally abide in pure awareness, free from ideas and concepts of hindrance and non-hindrance, stillness and movement, samsara and nirvana. They will laugh and enjoy the world and all that appears, as all that appears is pure illuminating suchness. Just as the sound of a bell reverberates through the metal and permeates all of space surrounding far and wide, unhindered and free, likewise the radiance of your pure awareness illuminates everything, permeates everywhere. I'm sorry, I lost my place. I apologize for my lack of mindfulness. Okay. Likewise, the radiance of your pure awareness illuminates everything, permeates everywhere, is unhindered by samsara and nirvana. Realization and liberation arises from within, and you experience lightness, ease, and compassion. One's wondrous awareness is in accord with nirvana and is beyond anyone's false perception that their body and mind constitute a self, a person, a sentient being, and a lifespan. This skillful means is called jhana. These 3 Dharma doors and practice methods are in intimate accordance with the perfect enlightenment. Buddhas in every direction and all times accomplish Buddhahood through these skillful means. All the different expedient methods and practices all tie back in some way to one of these three activities. When a bodhisattva perfects their training in them, they attain perfect enlightenment. If on your practice of the sagely path someone teaches, delivers, and succeeds in guiding hundreds of thousands of millions of people into arhatship and partake of Buddhahood, they cannot be compared with someone who hears this hindrance-free Dharma of perfect enlightenment and practices it even for an instant. At that time, the world-honored one, wishing to clarify his meaning, proclaimed these gathas. All-pervading, powerful, majestic virtue, you should know that one's unsurpassed, great enlightened mind of pure, radiant awareness is intrinsically non-dual, and the skillful means that are in accord with it are countless. The Buddha reveals three skillful means in the stillness and quietness arising from samatha. One's mind is mirror-like, reflecting all images. Samapati, wherein all is seen as an illusion, is like a seed growing gradually. The cessation and liberation arising from jhana of natural awakening is like the hindrance-free sound resonated from a bell. These three wondrous Dharma doors are in accordance with enlightenment. The Buddhas everywhere and the great bodhisattvas achieve Buddhahood through them. Perfect actualization of these three is called the ultimate absolute nirvana. And the next chapter is the Bodhisattva cleansed of all karmic hindrances. Then the Bodhisattva, cleansed of all karmic hindrances, rose from their seat and asked the Buddha, "O world-honored one of great compassion, you have explained at length to us such inconceivable things as the practices of the causal stages of all Buddhas, and have given this assembly insights they've never had before. Having seen in Buddha's arduous toil through lifetime after lifetime, as innumerable as the grains of sand in the Ganges, and seeing this effortful practice unfold as if it were but an instant of thought, we bodhisattvas feel deeply fortunate and joyous. World-honored one, to save all beings from innumerable lifetimes of struggle and strain in search of the natural, perfect, awakened mind, which is originally pure and ever-present, please explain what kinds of defilements cause sentient beings to suffer in delusion and not enter into the illuminating suchness in this instant. Please, Buddha, my only request is that you thoroughly reveal the nature of phenomena, so that this assembly and sentient beings in the Dharma ending age may use your teaching, experience, and wisdom as a guiding light in the future." The Buddha answered the Bodhisattva cleansed of all karmic hindrances, saying, "Since beginningless time, all sentient beings have deluded, conceived, and attached to the idea of a self, a person, a sentient being, and a lifespan. They take these four concepts and distort them into an idea of a real me. Founded on this delusion of a self, duality arises, love and hate, like and dislike, us and them, which then creates even more delusion. These two mutually dependent delusions produce the false karmic path. Producing false karma then makes one see and believe in transmigration, birth, and death. Those tired of the struggles, strain, and suffering of samsara then believe in nirvana. Still trapped in dualistic thinking, they cannot enter pure enlightenment. Why? Because they still believe in someone who's being freed from samsara and entering nirvana. So it doesn't matter if the mind is agitated in thought after thought or empty of thoughts. They still are confused and perplexed and cannot abide in perfect enlightenment. It is not that they are being blocked or rejected by enlightenment. Rather, it is because they haven't awakened their fundamental natural state of perfect awakening and rested in it. Pure awareness does not reject anyone or anything. How can it? It embraces all, so it is all embracing. And that includes you right now in this very moment. Excuse me. Pure awareness is available right now. So what do you mean there is much to practice? So what do you mean there is much to practice? All of you are already awakened. The practice is to drop the illusion and rest in your very own empty knowing radiance. The light of wisdom shines right now as naturally perfect empty clarity. So why can't sentient beings abide in natural awakening? Since beginningless time original, ignorance has arisen, creating dualistic grasping and a subjective ego. The wisdom I cannot arise because they become trapped in a body-mind filled with ignorance. This then creates likes and dislikes, love and hate, greed and aversion. Selfing solidifies, and this self enjoys it when things go well and gets angry and frustrated when life doesn't go as planned or wanted. So what is this trace of the self? It is that which is witnessed by a witnessing mind of sentient beings. That sense that I am meditating. For example, when you're healthy, you naturally forget all about your body. But the moment the body has an ache or a pain, you get sick and make an effort to heal and get back to health. You try lots of different things, and you're immediately and finally aware of your existence as a self. This selfing is only reference to this witnessing that you perceive and grasp to an apparent self-essence. Every kind of witnessing from this level up to the Buddha's perfect perception of pure nirvana is all the trace of self. So what is the trace of person? It is the cognition and affirmation continually made of the prior witnessing, where you believe wholeheartedly in that feeling of a self. It is not until you have experienced for yourself the letting go of self that you can break free of that sense of being a person. From this sense being a person all the way up to the sense of a witnesser until the final release of what is called the trace of a person. So what is the trace of a sentient being? It is that feeling and experience which, after self-witnessing and believing cognition of self, where ownership, classification, and labeling takes place. Take, for example, the person who says, I am a sentient being. What this person has called sentient being is neither a person or self, but is a mere categorization, labeling, setting apart of various imputed isolated qualities that have been clumped together and called sentient being. It is a creation. Then there is the experience of awakening, but this is just more traces of selfing. This idea of having realized something is the trace of sentient beings. So what is the trace of lifespan? This is the small karmic ego mind of sentient beings that threads together and tries to make sense of the prior traces. This small karmic mind and the wisdom mind cannot perceive themselves. But when the karmic mind dissolves into the wisdom mind, like when hot water melts ice, there is no distinctions and nothing crystallized to point to it. That crystallized ice mind that may be aware of being melted fades away as well. The non-existence of a false self and the apparent awareness of such a self is just like this. If sentient beings in the degenerate age do not comprehend this makeup and coming together of the four traces of the small, petty, crystallized ego mind, even after attempting to cultivate the path for lifetime after lifetime, for countless eons, they still will be bound by the marks of attachment to false notions. They are thus forever prevented from enjoying the fruits of sagehood. Why? Because they mistake the various aspects of the self for nirvana and regard their experiences and awakenings as accomplishments. There are still traces of this I, egoic, small, petty, crystallized mind remaining. This is comparable to a person who mistakes a thief for their own son. Their wealth and treasure will never increase. Why? Because if one grasps onto and believes deeply in the self, one will also grasp onto and believe deeply in nirvana, that liberation from the self. This is still dualistic grasping. The root of grasping onto the self is merely suppressed, and seemingly there is the appearance of nirvana. Similarly, if there is one who hates the self, one will also have hatred for samsara. Not knowing that grasping, clinging, attachment is the real source of samsara and this selfing mind, one is still in dualistic grasping by pointing to samsara and calling it non-liberation. How does one recognize and know this dharma of non-liberation? If sentient beings in the dharma ending age, while cultivating bodhi, have experienced slight realization of complete enlightenment and think that they're completely free, then they have not exhausted the root of the traces of the self. If someone praises their dharma, it gives rise to great joy and pride in their mind, and they want to liberate the praiser. If someone criticizes their achievement, that gives rise to anger and hatred in their mind. Thus one can tell that their attachment to the phenomena of the self is strong and firm. This self is hidden in the storehouse consciousness and plays freely through sense faculties without interruption. If these aspirants of the awakened mind don't see through the traces of the self, they will be unable to abide in a primordial, pure, and perfect enlightenment. If emptiness of the self is known, then there is also known that there is no eliminator of self. But if one sees oneself as expounding and sharing the Dharma, and then one has not ended their perceptions of having a self. This is also true with the perceptions of being sentient being and having a lifespan. Sentient beings of the degenerate age get caught in the traces of self and end up calling it the Holy Dharma. Compassion and sympathy burst forth for them. Even though they make diligent effort in their practice, all they're really doing are aggravating the disease and making it worse, making it harder to rest and abide in the spacious, natural, unborn radiance of perfect enlightenment. Sentient beings do not see and know these four traces of self, but they still claim realization of Buddha mind, but the opposite is true. When they see others making swift progress along the way, they become jealous and upset. This is a sure sign of not breaking free of the small self, and because of that, they cannot awaken to their inherent potential of primordial enlightenment. Sentient beings hope for Buddhahood, but put no energy of effort into awakening to their natural state. They fall in love with learning and intellectual knowledge, which only increases their sense of self. What they should do is courageously and diligently strive to alleviate their own suffering and afflictions, attain what they have not attained, sever what they have not severed, not allowing greed, anger, love, pride, flattery, crookedness, jealousy, and envy to arise, and extinguishing all love and attachment to self and other. Whenever this is faithfully done, the Buddha assures you that these people gradually awaken. Find a genuine teacher so you will not fall into mistaken views. And be ever mindful if you're being swept away by love or hate, like or dislike, because if that's the case, you can't enter into and abide in the ocean of pure radiant awareness. At that time, the world-honored one, wishing to clarify his meaning, proclaimed these gathas. Bodhisattva, cleansed of all karmic hindrances, know that all sentient beings, because of their attachment to and love of the self, have falsely been transmigrating since beginningless time. Because they have not removed the four false traces of self, they cannot attain Bodhi. Love and hate arise in their minds, and they harbor thoughts of flattery and crookedness. They are full of confusion and perplexity, unable to enter the city of enlightenment. If they want to reach the land of realization, they must first discard greed, anger, and delusion, and stop retaining their love of dharmas in their mind. Then they will gradually attain enlightenment. As one's body has always been empty, from what can one's love and arise? As one's body has always been empty, from what can one's love and hate arise? One should seek a beneficent, learned friend in order not to fall into the wrong views. If one entertains love or hate with respect to what one seeks, one ultimately cannot attain enlightenment. So thank you for tolerating me reading those two chapters of the Perfect Enlightenment Sutra. Just initial thoughts. The first one was much better. It taught the three generally standardized versions of or methods of meditation practice. And so that was good and interesting, and I have no issues with that at all. I think they were all fairly well described. And I guess I'm pretty happy to see that the Tao or the Taoist version of Qigong meditation was not in there. I would have definitely have had an issue with that, as it is clearly not Buddhist. On the second chapter, contained a lot more Taoism again. But a good teaching on not self. And I do believe that the Buddha truly mastered that thinking of not self. And that was by mastering not self, he mastered compassion for all the world, for all the cosmos, for all the universe. So yeah, that's a wonderful teaching, and mastering not self. There are quite a few Taoist teachings mixed in with that, especially about non-dualism. But not bad teachings at all. Certainly something to learn from. So a little more encouraged with that. Yeah, clearly some proselytizing of the Chinese Taoist adopted teachings into Chan Buddhism, but like I said, and there was a point that was made in there about I had said, how many types of enlightenment are there? And as I mentioned a week ago or so, the correct answer would be not 3, or not 2, I should say, not 2. And in this, it does teach that there are numberless forms of enlightenment. So maybe that's the answer to my question. There are numberless. Well, I think I'll meditate on that some. That took a little longer than normal, so we'll meditate for 15 minutes tonight. And yeah, I invite you to the bell and to enjoy your meditation for this evening. So thank you. Thank you for meditating with me. So now we will, as we do each night, we will recite the Bodhicitta prayer. The Bodhicitta prayer. With a wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Enthused by wisdom and compassion today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind for full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. Again, thank you for meditating with me, and I hope to see you again tomorrow night. Good night.